Hi there, today's story comes from the book Donegal Folk Tales by Joe Brennan and it's called Ghostlights in Ramelton. There was a woman who lived in Ramelton by the name of Eva, and if you had mentioned any of these events to her, she would have laughed. She was a religious woman and had no truck with superstitions or belief in anything other than God and mere mortals who walked the world like herself. She was a good Christian living woman who didn't let alcohol pass her lips and tried to keep bad words about others firmly behind her. She went to church every day and was good to her neighbours. Now her husband Paki was somewhat different in character. He led a good life, went to church every Sunday and was there to help his neighbours at the drop of the hat he kept firmly perched on his head, except when it rained. When asked why this was so, he promptly replied, "Sure, I wouldn't be sitting in the house with a wet cap on me head, would I?" Unlike his wife, he was partial to a wee drop once in a while, and then his tongue was somewhat looser. Despite his Christian values, he was prone to a bit of poaching, especially in the River Lennon. Now you might think this was somehow contrary to his beliefs, but in his view of the world, he wondered how any man can claim to own a river when it is constantly flowing and moving from one place to another. Occasionally he would walk the fields in search of rabbits to vary the plate at home. His wife never commented on the fine salmon that he put on the table, but her demeanour when rabbits were produced was somewhat different. Now this was not down to a different view of the rabbit over the salmon, but more to do with the company he kept when out lamping. These so-called good boys were fond of their messing about the town, and even more fond of the potching that was cooked up in the hills. "Where are you off to at this hour?" Eva asked him. "Sure, I'm just going for a bit of a stroll with a few of the boys," he said. "Ha, a bit of a stroll indeed," she snapped. "Would this stroll involve Patsy or Johnny?" "Aye, I think they'll be along," he said. "Well, don't come back here drunk." On one occasion the boys were up in the fields around Auchnagarry House. They were out lamping for rabbits, and as it was a clear night the temperatures had fallen, so they had a wee drop to keep the chill off. "We've been going around and around for ages," complained Patsy sometime later, "and we've got nowhere." "We've been going around and around for ages," complained Patsy sometime later, "and we've got nowhere." "I'm telling you, the house was just over there," said Johnny, pointing. "We've been over that way and it's not there," said Patsy. "I think we've been wandered, boys," says Paki. Don't be stupid, man," said Patsy and Johnny. "You don't believe in that sort of nonsense." "Indeed I do. Many's the story I've heard of people being wandered by the good people," said Paki. "Well, how else can you explain the fact that we've been wandering round here like fools for God knows how long?" demanded Paki. "We've just missed a gap in the hedge or something," said Patsy. "Well, look at that branch there with my handkerchief on it," said Paki. "We've passed that branch 4 times now. We're just going round in circles." "What is your handkerchief doing there then?" said Johnny. "I put it there when I thought we had been wandered," said Paki. You're just having us on with your handkerchief and wandering nonsense," said Patsy. "It's a fact, and the best thing we can do is stop here till the good folk lift the wandering," said Paki. Just then they saw a light moving a short distance away. "What's that?" asked Patsy. "I don't know," said Paki, "but will you look at the poor dog? It's frozen in terror and his hair standing on end." "Quick, hide," said Johnny. The 3 of them fell to the ground and held the dog tight. They peered through the hedge as the light drew closer. There was no sound, but they could see it was the window of a carriage on its way up to the house. "That was close," said Patsy. We must be closer to the house than we thought," said Johnny. "But why was the dog so scared?" asked Paki. "He wasn't the only one," said Patsy. "You look like you saw a ghost." "Did you not feel it when the carriage went past?" "Feel what?" said Johnny. "And what carriage?" "A terrible chill," said Paki. "And what carriage are you talking about?" said Johnny. "I didn't hear the sound of any carriage." "Exactly. It was a ghost carriage, I tell you," said Paki. Don't be ridiculous. You've had too much to drink. First the wee folk wandering us, and now ghosts," said Johnny. "I felt it too," said Patsy. "What?" said Johnny. "Never mind your bravado, Johnny," said Patsy. "I can see it in your eyes that you felt it too." "Well, maybe there was something a bit odd about it," said Johnny. "I'm getting out of here," said Paki. "Look, you can see the lights of the house now." The 3 friends headed away from the house and out onto the main road. As they stepped out, they nearly crashed into Mickey. "Where are you going like a crazy thing?" asked Paki. "It's yourself, Paki," said Mickey. "I heard the sound of you coming and I thought it was that carriage coming back again." What carriage? Said Patsy. I was coming down the road there on my bike when I see the two lights of a carriage coming up the road, a sight you don't see too often these days, said Mickey. And because it's so dark, I got off the bike and got into the side of the road. But the blasted thing came charging at me and knocked me into the ditch. It took me ages to crawl out of it with the bike on top of me. How do you know it was a carriage? Johnny asked him. I saw the lights, said Mickey. We saw it too, said Paki. We saw something, but we didn't hear anything. It was that carriage, said Paki. We saw the light from within, but it weren't a natural thing, I tell you. They all headed down the brae towards the town. The first house they came to was Paki's. Don't be annoying that wife of yours with your stories, Patsy warned. Sure, she won't believe a word of it anyway, said Paki. He went inside to be greeted by a suspicious-looking Eva. You're home early, and not a rabbit in sight, she began, but stopped when she saw his face. Good God, what happened? She said, you look like you've seen a ghost. And with that he told the whole of the curious incidents of the night. Too much drink, that's what it is, Eva declared. And what about Mickey? Said Paki. Your own cousin and him coming home from work? Ah, he's always imagining things in the dark, she said. It's true, I'm telling you, Eva. Aye, true like that story you told me about the fish earlier today, she said. That was the truth. You expect me to believe that a salmon knocked Patsy out cold and then flapped back into the river. Well, where else did it go? He asked. The fool let it go. He did not, said Paki. I thought I saw the keeper just after we hauled it in. It was huge. I said, run. I went one way, and when I looked back, Patsy was struggling to his feet with the fish. I went and hid myself and waited. I didn't see any sign of the keeper and guessed I must have imagined it, so I went back to find Patsy, and there he was, lying flat on his back where I had seen him last, but no fish. He had a right bump on the side of his face. Ah, get out of it, you, with your old story, said Eva. Now, about a week later, Eva was coming out of church after evening mass when she met her friend Maggie. Do you fancy a wee walk, Eva? Said Maggie. It's such a lovely night. Aye, I would, said Eva. I'm in no hurry home as Paki's out with the boyos. They headed up along the Letterkenny road. They chatted away as they walked with nothing to disturb the night other than the hoot of an owl. But suddenly they both cried out and stood stock still. They felt a terrible chill creeping over them. Then they saw it, two carriage lights approaching at great speed. They knew they should step in to let it pass, but they were frozen to the spot in terror. Then the two lights came on top of them and passed on through. Neither of them could speak nor move for some time. What was that? Whispered Maggie at last. I don't believe I'm saying this, but I think it was a ghost carriage, said Eva. I laughed at poor Paki when he told me they had seen something like this last week. The two women turned on their heels and headed home. By the time they arrived, Paki was sitting in the chair by the fire. What's happened to you? He asked. You look like you've seen a ghost. Well, God forgive me for not believing you last week, said Eva, but I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it with my own two God-given eyes. And from that day on, she wasn't as quick to dismiss Paki's stories, but she rarely spoke of what she herself had witnessed that night. Thank you. Bye-bye.